Hey, and welcome back to Power of the Programmer. This is section 5.2, and in this section we're going to be covering debugging. The first method that we're going to be covering are print statements. So I'm sure you've already seen me use this as I was working on the previous sections, but print statements basically are a way for you to print what your variable is onto the terminal. Such as this. Let's open up the Python interpreter and set v equals to hello, and then let's print v so we can see what our data labels stand for. So in this section, we're going to be covering using print statements to debug our code. And if you're following along, you can open up section 5 in the learning examples from this course on the website. And what I created for you is 3 different scenarios using the sales data from the previous section's code, and I threw in 5 issues into every one of those files: the print, the PDB, and the conditional. And what I also prepared for you is a working version, correct. So when you have what you believe is a working copy, then you can go ahead and open up the terminal and run the diff command, and you can run correct.txt against the different files. Every file, when it's working, will print out a file labeled after the file name. So if it's print.py, it'll put out print.txt, and what the diff command will do is print.txt doesn't exist yet, but let's run it against output.csv, and what it will do is run it against every line and tell you what the differences are. So when it is working correctly, then you should have no issues. So if we run diff against working diff against correct.txt again, there should be no printouts. Let's run that one more time to show you. So that should be what comes out when you have a completely working file. When you don't have any, if you don't have it correct, then what the diff command will do is show you every line that is that has an issue. So that way it'll be an easy way to check your code, make sure that you are completely done debugging your code. And why this is important is that without working code, it just doesn't work, and it's not going to do fix the problem that you're trying to solve. So there's 2 options when you do have broken code. There's hire a developer or fix it yourself. And hiring a developer is costly. I'm not sure if you've checked out Upwork or Freelancer recently, but developers start from $20 an hour all the way up to $100 an hour. So they're very expensive, and fixing your code yourself, especially most of the time, it's a very small issue, and you know your work better than anybody. Also, you might not necessarily want to hand over your data to somebody on the internet. So debugging is an economical way of making sure you get your projects done, because as always, done is better than perfect, but to get done, you need to fix your own stuff. The polish is always the last part, and it's always the most time intensive. So let's go ahead and open print.py and start debugging this code. So as you can see, this is our code from the previous section with the sales data, and what we're going to go ahead and do in this section is let's run it one time to see what happens, see if it even runs. So immediately I can see that there's an issue in one of the lines. So how I read this is what is called a stack trace. So basically what happens when a program fails is it prints out the stack, which is how the computer is running the program, and tells you exactly what line is running into an issue. So the top level, so think of it like layers. So like layers to an onion. So the top level, the first line, is the main function that it's breaking on, and then after that, the next line is going to be one level deeper, like the next layer of an onion, and then the third line is going to be the third layer of the onion all the way down to where the real problem is. So the last line right before the actual issue, which is key error eBay, is the line that is actually breaking on. And there's either pretty generic errors, but you can always copy and paste this and type it into Google, and it'll tell you exactly what the issue is. A lot of times Stack Overflow will have an answer. So the key error, just type in key error Python, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong with it. It says Python raises a key error whenever a dictionary object is requested. So basically that tells me that it's an issue with our dictionary, when the key is not in a dictionary. So this immediately tells me that the key error against eBay means that there's something wrong with our eBay. And lo and behold, let's look at line 28. Line 28 states S channel I, so that means it's looking at the states dictionary or the states list and looking for the channel I. The channel I is the eBay, so that means that it's not in the dictionary for the states. And lo and behold, Amazon, Etsy. So first off, we can always just fix the eBay, and it looks like now that we fixed it, we can run it one more time. It looks like it fixed that issue and it moved on to the next issue. So that was 1 out of 5, and we can follow the same process for the next one. In this section, I'm just going to go through the code and explain my thought process so you can follow along and learn the basics of debugging your code. So first step is always make sure the program fully runs before even attempting to debug, because those call issues are the easiest to find since it tells you exactly where the issue is. So next issue is in 167, it calls main, and then 141 is where the actual issue is. So 141, the datetime to string doesn't work. So why is this not working? So it looks like this sorted command in Python is not saving our dates properly. So let's look at a free resource and see what happens. How do they do it? Oh, it looks like they have to set the sorted equal to something. It looks like the sorted isn't set equal anything, so maybe our dates aren't being saved. So let's go ahead and fix that. Dates equals sorted dates. Run it again. It looks like that didn't solve the problem completely. So the datetime to string isn't working. So it doesn't look like that's the issue. So let's revert that for now and then go back to the line before. So when you have an issue, it's always working backwards. Just from experience, I know that this is going to be an issue later, also since I made this, but it looks like it might be the line before. So if 141 is not the issue, let's look at the line before. Do you see an issue with this program? If you notice the -1 on the length minus date, you're correct. Basically what is happening here is that it's not saving every date, but unless you have a really keen eye or you have a lot of experience, then you won't immediately see this issue. So one thing that we can do to do this is have another for loop and recreate this for loop and then print out what is going on. So let's print the date I just to see what's happening in this list. And it looks like everything is being printed out pretty correctly. So what we can do here is call the type, since we know it's a type issue. So it's is expecting a datetime but is getting a string. Remember, different variable types are kind of like different currencies. You can't go to Argentina with euros. You probably can in some stores, but in most stores you probably can't. You want to use the Argentinian currency. Same way you can't go to India with yen, Chinese yen or Japanese yen. They just won't accept it. It's like not the accepted currency. So we want to convert all our currency before we use them. So it looks like everything is being set correctly. Okay, so the date time is correct. Now let's figure out what's going on before that. So it says in 144, you can't compare datetime to string. Oh, so we see here we can't just straight up copy this because it's looking at all the ones I already copied. So if you look at the bottom one, type string, it looks like removing that last -1 fixed the issue. So over here we can go ahead and remove that -1. So basically what was happening here was it was converting all the datetimes, all the strings into datetimes through our little variable converter, kind of like a currency converter, but it was missing the last one. So let's go ahead and run this again. It looks like it worked and it printed out. So now we have a working program. So now we can start doing some comparisons and checking if our output is correct. Because if our output isn't correct, then our program doesn't work and our data is bad. And it's always bad to make decisions off bad data because bad decisions lead to loss of money, loss of time, potential loss of business, which is very bad if you are starting up. So let's run this against our working version. Print diff print.text against correct. And we can see the seconds are completely off. The expected is 9018. What we're getting is 413. So something about this is terribly wrong. This is going back to where we were before. Remember, in our process, we wanted to order the dates in increasing order. So we should see if all the dates are in increasing order before we even attempt this command. So let's print out all our dates to see if they're in order. And it doesn't look like they are. They're in decreasing order. So this isn't exactly the format we want. Also, 508 definitely doesn't come before 522. So it looks like this is going back to the issue we had before. The sorted should have been saved, but it's not being saved. So if we remember, we checked it out online. We have to set the sorted result into something else. So let's go ahead and save it to date, and let's run it one more time to see if this is working. Great, it changed it, but it didn't solve the issue. So let's go back and let's just change this back for now, because if that isn't getting us closer, then we might as well bring it back so we can actually fix the issue. So now that we know that this isn't the main issue, but let's just save it for later. So what I like to do is add a comment, potential issue over here. So at least it's logged, so I know that I can come back to it later. So if this isn't the actual issue, then maybe it's something in our find average function. So let's go to the find average function and look. Can you see something that might be an issue in this program, in this function? Let's check it out. So basically in this find average function, our objective is find the average time between sales. We order the dates in increasing order, already did that. We find the difference between the order times, we did that, and we average it. So where are our calculations happening mostly? It looks like our calculations are really happening in the first loop as well as the second loop. Over here we are finding all the deltas and getting the seconds between them. So only really way we can do this is go at this one by one. So first let's look at the deltas and see if they are working properly. So let's go ahead and copy this loop and then print out what our deltas are at each point. Let's run this again, and we can see that it looks like our deltas are coming out pretty well. We still have that issue with the sorted, so all of these are decreasing, but at least they're mostly decreasing if we saw from before. So at least if this is still, if this was an issue, then if the sorted potential issue we marked before was the issue, then at least it should be about right, just in the negative sign. Because if you remember correctly, it's still going downwards. It's just in the opposite direction. So it should be around 9018. It just should be a negative 9018 instead of a positive 9018. So this shouldn't be the issue. So if we look at the second for loop, let's run it and see what happens at every iteration with the seconds. Which, if you remember correctly, the seconds should always be increasing. It should, because we're taking the seconds and adding the delta seconds and adding that to the total. So if you see it, it's actually changing and decreasing between every iteration. So something tells me that there's some issue with the seconds being set. So it looks like we're changing the seconds back to 0 at every iteration, which will cause an issue because now we're not storing the seconds, we're just resetting it. So let's move this out of the loop and run it one more time. That's much closer to what we were supposed to get. So let's run the diff, and at least it's big now. At least we're making progress towards what we're actually getting to. This is why I always like knowing what the answer is before we get it, because it gives us a heuristic or a direction to look before we even start attempting to fix our program. So since this is already an issue, let's go back and change it and run it one more time. So now we're getting what we're supposed to be getting. And it looks like our program is completely fixed. So those were the 5 issues. The date wasn't being set correctly. There was a -1 for the date over here. In the loop, the seconds was being reset every time. The key was off, and there was another instance where we were setting we were iterating the loop incorrectly. So those were 5 issues that we found in this program based on using print statements to sort of help us debug. So this was an example of using print statements on how to fix your program. So in the next section, we're going to be looking at conditionals, using conditionals, or they're also called asserts in some languages, but the concept is still the same. And whenever you're ready, we're going to be moving on and covering that in the next section.